Welcome to Musicians versus the World, the podcast where we explore aspects of music and musician life that may not have been covered in music school. I am your host, Christine Smith, and today we are talking with award-winning mixing engineer Shalev Alon. We'll be discussing the art of mixing music, the difference between mixing vocal and instrumental music, and we'll also hear Shalev's excellent advice on building a successful career in music. Shalev Alon is an Israeli award-winning mixing engineer based in Hollywood. He started his career as a guitarist, producing music for artists in various genres. Upon moving to Los Angeles, Shalev gained experience working at numerous world-class studios, such as Remote Control Productions, Disney, 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, Netflix, and much more. And I am so grateful that he is here to talk with us. So Shalev, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Musicians versus the World.
Thank you so much, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Well, I'm so excited to have you here. I think so much musicality and creativity and just so much is added in the mix when it comes to music. And I can't wait to hear your perspective on that and kind of dig in the weeds with that. And you also have some incredible tips on how musicians can be successful and have a career in the music business. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that as well. So let's just dive right into it. First off, what is it that a mixing engineer does?
In short, I'll sum it up. The mixing engineer basically is in charge of the width, the depth, and the height of the musical piece. It's basically enhancing everything that is good, basically in the piece or in the song. Just makes that everything takes everything that is good in the production and make it sound better, make it shine, make it sound bigger, wider, more full, with a little bit more weight.
Oh, I'd love to hear about some of the differences between vocals and instrumentals. But first, let's kind of maybe get a big picture. So you mentioned height, width, and depth. Can you explain a little bit about how those three things make a mix good?
Yes. So there's like each one of these speaks about different elements and different processing that needs to be done to achieve those aspects. So width is basically can be made by panning or reverb or delay or a volume gain between the left and right to make everything sound bigger. So when we listen to something and everything is go very wide to the left and the right, it sounds very big. It sounds, we call it like bigger than life, and it sounds very, very epic. So this is why we're really trying to get a lot of it in every piece that I'm working on. So that's first. And there's also the part where you need to find the balance between the center and your left and right, because that's also impact on the width. So if you only have some elements in the left and right, but you don't have anything in the center, if there's nothing and there's no balance between the center and the left and right, then it won't sound as big as it can be, and the impact won't be the same. So that's one. And the second is the depth. And depth is basically speaks a little bit more about volume, because we perceive volume on with distance. So the lower the volume is, we perceive it as farther. If the volume is up, then we perceive it as closer. So there's a lot of dynamic play that I do, and a lot of volume balance that I change throughout the piece. So that's about depth. And then we have height. That's the tricky part, because every person, from my experience, I feel like every person perceive height in different ways. So there's people who will say that they perceive height with frequencies, like high frequencies. They feel it a little bit more, in their head, above them. Or maybe they will feel it a little bit more in I don't know, in the ears of the shiny type of sound. So that can also bring the element of height. If we put a guitar and then we put a lot of reverb to it, and we start to like think about what type of reverb do we want, like big hall, small room, whatever. That can also bring a lot of height, because suddenly the guitar, if it's like in the center and I put like a nice big reverb on it, then we can also perceive it as like it's like very high in our head. Because today there's a lot of like talk about binaural mixes and Atmos and all those stuff. But I mean,
And
if you
that's
really
like literally above your head, isn't it, Atmos?
exactly, yeah. It's funny, but if you think about it, like binaural mixes are actually stereo mixes, and because Atmos system, there's you need the specific amount of speakers for that, but binaural mixes for headphones are still stereo, but there's a lot of game and a lot of variations between reverb and volume and phasing that basically gives us the imitation of like, oh, this thing is up there, this thing is behind me, this thing is, so it's a lot of processing combination that gives us the sound, like we perceive it as like it's 360 all around us.
Isn't that
Uh,
amazing that our minds do that? I mean, it's
yeah,
just stereos, but then we picture it completely somewhere else.
100%. It's you can speak about like audio all day, and you can explain to yourself how it's been made, but at the end of the day, like our ears and our mind, like he's in charge of like what our final decisions. Even if we see something and we're like, oh, this is like, it's logical that it's the same volume, maybe, or maybe we're telling ourselves, oh, it's logical that this goes a little bit to the right, but our ears can perceive it very different. So it doesn't even matter if we see something, as like if we hear it in a different way, then this is how it is. It doesn't matter what the computers tell us. So
Yeah.
this is something that I always try to follow in every music process that I'm in. I always keep reminding myself that if it sounds good, it's good, and don't listen to the computer too much. Because it's very, there's a lot of people who like to follow that, and I remember even when I was an assistant. I remember my old boss. His name is Brad Hanel. He's a score mixing engineer, and he always told me like, "Hey, if you see clipping, if you see the red dots on the meter, it doesn't matter. If it sounds good, it's good. We don't care about
Really?
this. Yeah, like it doesn't matter. If it sounds good and you don't hear the clipping, you don't hear the distortion, you're good. Don't worry about it."
So, how was that something difficult for you to break away from? Like all of those sensors, like all of the things on the computer? Was it hard for you to be like, okay, wait, no, it's okay. It sounds okay. Like I just feel, I don't know. I guess I feel somewhat dependent on my computer to tell me if something's sounding good or not.
Right. Honestly, yeah, it's something that I was kind of like was used to, because I come in the engineering world, like from a musician perspective, because I started as a guitar player, and it's not like I came like as a tech person or as a computer person into the engineering music world. Like I started as a musician, so I was never really like very big into tech and deep into tech until I became an engineer. So I always follow of like, hey, if it sounds good, it's good. I don't care how I made it happen, but this is how it should be. Now, of course, I know the aspect and the reasons and the calculation of why it happens, but still, it's really easy for me to ignore it, because if I feel it's good, then it's good. I don't care, because that's we only listen with our ears. We don't listen with our eyes. It's called engine ears. So
That's good. Yeah. So
this is
you
how it is.
trust yourself. You trust, and that's where the artistry comes in, because you've got to have your ears and your own musicality, your own creativity with
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's dive into the weeds a little bit, because you say that vocals are different than instrumentals. Can you
Yeah.
explain what is so, I guess, difficult about
Yeah.
vocals?
Um, well, in vocals, I'll say the more that I learn it, because I come from an orchestral background,
Right.
but the deeper that I got into vocals and pop and hip hop, especially when I start to work on like top 40 stuff, it's definitely I saw how it's a crazy world, like getting into vocals. Like it's a whole different Bible out of itself. Just the fact that you need to work on, like, it depends how deep you go, but like if you really want to go to the industry standard of what we hear on the radio with all the famous singers that we all know, their producers and their engineers go very very deep into their vocals, and that's of course I learned it from the engineers that I worked for, and I saw how they do it. And you sometimes, like, you have like your lead vocals track sometimes spread out on like 20 tracks, where you need to cut like syllables and put them on a different track, or you need to cut like a vowel or a word or something that happens in a specific part of the vocals, and you need to put it on a different track as you need to treat it differently. There's a lot of elements to this. So for example, when we sing, we have a lot of vowels that comes very harsh, like ch and t and k, and like all those stuff, and the s's that are very harsh to our ears, and you need to control like each one of them, because if a singer sing, he doesn't care about that, he just sing, right? But we need to make his s, like every s that he put in his word needs to treat a little bit differently, because every time he pronounced it a little bit different. So we need to put it on, I mean, the method that I work with, like I put it on specific different tracks and I treat it differently. If it's a different adjustment on the de-esser, or maybe EQ wise, because there's a lot of parts and a lot of times where a singer is singing something, and then one I don't know, one word is basically perceived to us as louder, but if I look at it, then it looks like the same volume, but somehow this one word came out in volume and it sticks out more. So a lot of people, like, they will immediately treat it as like, oh, okay, so it's a volume thing and I need to just bring down the volume. But no, sometimes you need to check why it happens. Maybe there's a bass note that plays with this specific word, or maybe there's a guitar rhythm thing that happens, or maybe there's a kick or an 808 that happens exactly on that word. And then you can see like, oh, okay, that's the reason why it became so loud. So maybe I need to dip some frequencies in the other element, or maybe I need to raise frequencies on this specific word. So you also take it to a different track and you treat it differently. So you won't like immediately, okay, if it's too loud, then I need to bring it down in volume. If it's too low, then I need to bring it up. It's not always the case.
Oh, so that way you don't have to turn down the volume of that vocal. You can just single out that one frequency that's making everything sound like loud and messy.
Exactly. Like, so if if a singer, because again, like if you want to get into the, to make stuff sound like the top 40, like, and if you really hear it and you take a listen, you see how stable those vocals are. Like you understand every syllable, even the breath are like specifically dedicated for, like, I don't know, the specific moment of the song. So every breath, every little syllable and vowels, like, was really thought about, like how it's been played and when it's been played, or when it's been performed. Then you need to think about it the same as the same thing. Like, okay, so this breath is here. Why is it here? How loud it needs to be? Is this an intimate part of the song? Are we talking about chorus now, where there's a lot of elements that happen, so the breath are not as important as like the C part, which is very intimate now, and there's a break from the beat or something like that? You need to really think about like how every syllable and every vowel is, like, sitting in the song. And it's very important to think about it, because there's a lot of very surgical work that you really need to think about if you want to get there, and if you want to compare your vocals to, I don't know, whoever your idol is.
Right.
Of course, if we're going even farther back, you really need to think about your vocal chain. So like, how did you record it? What microphone did you use? What, of course, I keep talking about the engineering part and the technical part, but I always try to say that at the end of the day, if you have a good song, it doesn't matter what you use. Like, if you have a good song, you have a good song. It doesn't matter. Like, you can pick up the guitar and play, and if your song is a hit, everybody will understand it just from you playing it on a guitar. You don't need the fancy production. So there's always this part, of course, but sonic wise, if we're just talking sonic wise, you always need to think about like the source. How did you record it? Where did you record it? And everything that needs to be around it. And then, of course, production and arrangement, because that's, I mean, 50% of your mixing, sometimes even more. It depends on how much experience you have on production. But yeah, so that's a little bit, in a nutshell, I guess, because it goes very deep. We can
That's
talk about
amazing.
this just for a full hour just on this. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm really seeing that. That's incredible. How long does it usually take you to do, say, a 3-minute song to make it sound top 40?
um, well,
I
I
guess it
mean,
depends on the whole vocal chain and how well it's produced, right?
yeah, I mean, let's say if I got like a really good, production and a very good recording, I, 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 I actually divide it to like hours. So I don't work like 8 hours a day on one song. I never do
Right.
that.
Right.
I try to like divide it. So like maybe, I don't know, for one song, I'll work on it like 3 hours, and then the next day I'll work another 3 hours. So I'll say in total, it can take me like, I don't know, maybe 20 hours, but I divide it to
Wow.
like days. So,
Yeah.
so like each day I'll give it like 2 hours, 3 hours, just to make sure, because you need to be fresh every time, and you get ear fatigue very, very fast.
Mhm.
Especially, when you work in like high volumes, and it depends, of course, how you listen, what your system is, but still, it's very important to give yourself this rest, because there's a lot of like stuff that we think sound, in a certain points to us, and then if we rest for 2 hours and we come back, suddenly it's not even there. Like it happened to
Mm.
me where I was like, worked on dynamic on a specific song on the vocals, and it sounded amazing, and I was like, oh, that's it, it's perfect, I love it. And then I don't know, went to eat lunch or whatever, came back, and I was like, okay, before I print it, I'll just take one more listen. And then I found 2, 4, 5 more words that like, oh, this one sticks out a little bit, half a dB less there, or maybe this frequency now the notch needs to be a little bit different in the EQ. So like there's a bunch of stuff that can happen. So I always try to give myself like the most, amount of days that I can actually come back to like with fresh ears.
Right.
Of course, if there's like a deadline, then we need to hit the deadlines. But it's definitely, if you wanna go to like, and be in the realm of all these, big pop hip hop artists, you really need to give yourself this, at least a nice few days, a couple of days to like mix it, 5 days a week, whatever.
Hmm.
um, and it depends, of course, how perfect you want it to be, because there's also, we have deadlines, we have more songs that we want to work on. There's a bunch of elements, but if you really want to get it the best, then it's definitely, that's the way for me, for sure.
Yeah. What are
Yeah.
some things that you see, some like common mistakes that people make when mixing?
um I'll say there's a lot of a lot of work in like trying to make an element sound different. So like maybe put like a little bit too much plugins on it, or maybe working with saturation a little bit too much,
Mm.
or maybe compress some stuff a little bit too much. That happens a lot. I mean, especially these days, which I can understand from a mastering point of view, because you really need to hit those, loud LUFS. You need to get to that places, because you want to compete with whoever you want to compete, right? But I really try to work with everything manually. So like there's a lot of plugins today that can do what I told you right now. It can do it automatically, like Vocal Rider by Waves, or by I forgot the other company, but you have this plugin where it just like it's right on the volume for you. You just let it go, and it does the work for you. But it's not even as close if you actually do it yourself,
Mm.
because there's a lot of different variations and different parts of like, because the plugin, he doesn't care about the other element that being played. He just see a waveform, boom, it takes it down. You see a waveform that it's like too low, it takes it up. It does what a computer does, which is great. But if you're talking about like a creative stand of point of view, or like, if you're thinking about the other elements, you can't really use it. You have to do everything manually. Like I
Yeah.
will never, I mean, this is something that I definitely really, really believe in. And I feel like it's something that we always need to like, keep going, because at the end of the day, if you don't use it, then the standard of the music will just be downgrade. So I always try to like, whatever a plugin can do, I'm thinking first like, hey, can I do it myself, like
Oh,
manually in
okay.
a way? And if yes, then I do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing that I like to remind myself. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it goes back to, do you trust like the computer dials or do you trust your ears, right? So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yes,
That's
yes.
really very, very interesting. My goodness. So
Thank
now, but we've been talking about vocals, but you said you are more from an orchestral side. What is your background? How did you get to where you are right now?
Okay, so I don't know how short or long should I go with the story, but you'll just stop me if I'm
Yep, go ahead.
Uh, so I started as a guitar player. I was in a band, did the whole thing about being a guitarist in a band, and then I was a little bit more into the classical world. So I played a lot of classical guitar, and after that, I found myself producing a little bit and producing with some friends and like doing it for for fun. And then I saw myself like really putting most of my time into mixing, which I really like doing. Um, and I basically found out about Musician Institute in Hollywood, that they have a great audio engineering program. And I went abroad to study there for 1 year audio engineering. And after a few months, I got into the internship program. And in the internship program, one of the professor that I had there helped me out to get an interview at Remote Control Production. And I got the interview. I was accepted, and I started my path. So I felt very ready to like start, go into the world and like see what I can offer. So I started as an intern. Um, After a few weeks as an intern for Hans Zimmer team, I moved to a different team for a composer named Henry Jackman. Um, and then after that, I started to work in different studios in town, like a little bit more hip hop and pop. So like 17 Hertz and Windmark Recording and NRG Studios and a bunch of like different pop and hip hop studios. After that, I met Brad Hanel, which he's a phenomenal score mixing engineer. And his clients are like Mark Mothersbaugh, John Powell, and John Debney, and like a lot of amazing composers. And I got to be his assistant. That was like after 6 months, where I sent him emails, came to his studio, put my resume into his
Oh my
into his
goodness.
mailbox, like doing this for like 6 months at least, every like 1 month. Every one time of the month, I went to his studio, put in my resume, and sent an email. Did whatever I needed to do, basically, until he got back to me and he was like, "Hey, yeah, I actually have an open spot if you want." And then I started my journey with him, and I learned a lot about like recording orchestras and mixing orchestra and mixing in surround and like doing really phenomenal stuff. Edit how to edit an orchestra, how to work with a big theme, because we did the Lego Ninjago movie, and we did the Hotel Transylvania short, and we worked on a few rides on the, I think it was like a Minion ride or something like that for Universal in Japan, and so we did a lot of like different stuff. And it was just like great to learn about like how to work, with corporate and
Mhm.
studios and what their team is like. And I mean, you have so many people in for this product that you're working on, project, whatever. Then that was also taught me a lot about the business itself. So that was great for me. And after that, I started to work a little bit for Disney Imagineering, and they're doing all the music for the Disneyland parks. I actually had the chance to mix the Marvel Infinity live show that they had in Disneyland Paris. So they had like an outdoor show and an indoor show. So I was the one who mixed the outdoor show. It's like a live Marvel show that they do in Disneyland Paris. So that was like the first thing that I was very, very proud of like doing. After that, I started to work on with the team that are basically in charge of all of the music in Galaxy's Edge Disneyland Park as well.
Oh my
So
goodness.
all the Star Wars land, and that was like a phenomenal opportunity for me because I got to mix the music inside of the cantina, the famous cantina
Wow.
from the Star Wars movies that they built in Disneyland. So I actually did some of the mixing. Of course, it wasn't just me. There were, we were a whole team of people. So we did that, and of course, we worked a little bit on like different type of music that was played in the park itself. So that was, a great opportunity for me also to work like as that was my first gig, not being an assistant anymore.
Oh my
So
goodness, Disneyland. Great.
yes,
No pressure.
I know. I mean, yes, it was. It was also after a very long time that I was in touch with, with people from Disney that just kind of like I got to know them a little bit, and I felt like those relationship, there you never know when it's gonna come. Like you just.
Yeah.
You just have those relationship. You keep on working. You keep on, meeting people and building relationship until something happens. And that was also like something that I think I was in touch with them for at least 8 months until something happened.
Wow.
So that was my journey at Disney. And then after that, I kind of like felt like I need to become a full-on freelance. I felt like I can open my own studio. So I started to basically work with some of the studios like like Netflix, that some of the connections came from composer that I worked with, or maybe it was Warner Chappell, where I did like library music mixing for them, and I worked for like Hulu. Some of my composers wrote some music for them. So I worked on like various stuff that basically happened in a very short amount of time, and I felt like I was very ready to do that because for me it was like a smooth ride because I worked for a very long time on major projects and big corporations.
Well, and that's a perfect segue into the next part of what I want to talk with you about, because you had said in an interview that everyone can be successful in music in the entertainment business. And it seems like it's just a very difficult business to be a musician and to make a living doing that.
Yep.
And what sort of advice do you have? I mean, I think there's a lot that we can learn just from hearing your story, for sure. But what are some lessons that you've learned along the way that you think that musicians need to know as they're shaping their career?
Well, the main thing that I'll say, and the main thing that I actually said in that article was, first of all, you have to think about like how you define yourself when you're successful, right? So, of course, most people will compare it immediately into money, or like, oh, I'm successful, I'm rich, right? So, but it really depends on how you perceive it, because successful can mean so many things. For me, I can say for me that successful for me starting for a point where like I always dreamed to make a living from music. That's it, just make a living. I would never about like, oh, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be whatever. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to do that, then first of all, I wouldn't be an engineer. I'll be something because you don't have famous engineers, that just don't happen. But I just wanted to make a living out of something that I like,
Right.
and of course, there are specific places in the world where it's more achievable, like here in LA. So I definitely came to a point where I was like, okay, success for me is if I get to do that, because I know not a lot of people can achieve that, and do whatever they like in life and just make a living out of it. Now, it doesn't matter if like when you say make a living, it's like, oh, I'm living very well, I go to vacation every whatever, or you make a living just like, hey, I pay my bills, like it doesn't matter where you are in the scale. it matter like if you wake up in the morning and this is what you do. That's it. This is what I do. I don't do anything else. I don't touch any other profession in my life. So that's counted success for me. So first of all, you need to think about like what's the success mean to you? Because if success is just about being famous and rich, then no, not everybody can be successful, right?
Right.
But if you're thinking about it from a different perspective, it's just about like, hey, I can provide myself, provide my family out of doing something that I like, which involve in music. Can be anything. If you're a singer, if you're a player, if you're an arranger, orchestrator, composer, whatever. Um, so this is how I felt like, when I defined what it would be for me to be successful. Now for the other part that you asked is like, I feel like, doing it is, I mean, I keep like, listening to a lot of podcasts, like your podcast, of course, and and like, a lot of like different podcasts, not even music related. That's like you think and you hear about people like who kind of like made it, but when you hear and you listen to these people, like you see a common thing. You think about the common thing that like everyone has, and the most common thing that I found out is be how to say it, like persistent. And you keep doing it every day. You keep sending emails, you keep knocking on doors, you keep receiving no's, and you keep going to events, you keep all of that. If you do it long enough and you do it every day, something will happen. It's just like, I heard somebody say in one of the podcasts that I listened to, like he said, like if you quit in the middle, then you're not deserved to get it. You know what I mean? Um, just like a few weeks ago, I did a masterclass at Berkeley, and the one thing that I told him is, a lot of people in the industry will tell you they're busy all the time, they're working all the time, whatever. But trust me, everybody's looking for work all the time. It's a
Right.
super hard industry. And even now that I'm speaking about all this amazing stuff that I did and whatever, I'm still looking for projects. I'm still doing that. I'm still going to meetings. I'm still going to events. I'm still sending emails. I'm still doing everything that I did when I started. Maybe I do it in a lower volume now. Maybe I don't know. Like I go to specific things that I know that will get me something, but still, like I still do that because
Right.
I have my downtime as well. Like I have a month where I'm like, okay, what's the next project?
How does a musician or an engineer or anybody, if they're trying to sell themselves, is there a balance of maybe coming off too eager or too aloof? Like, how do you find that balance? Is it more about building friendships, or do you go in saying, no, this is what I can do for you? What tips do you have for people trying to make those relationships and like sell themselves?
That's a great question because it's I say it's varies from a person to person, and it
Hmm.
depends who you want to work with. That's stuff that I'm still learning today. Like I'll say people, from what I saw and from my experience, people that has a little bit more social awareness
Hmm.
tends to know that more, and people tends to work with them more, just because they have that social awareness. So like, okay, how eager do I need to be with this person now? Do I need to sell myself a little bit more, or do I need to lay back and be a good hang? Like what, how do you kind of like read the situation? You read the person, you read the room, you read all of that. And I'll say also, as an engineer, that's something that is very important, not just to get the gig, but it's also very important during the gig, because you're in a
Mm.
room sometimes with the producer and the composer and the director and whoever is in the room, and you now need to be the mediator between all these people and make everybody happy. So
Mm.
you always need to read the room, like who said something that maybe the other person, oh, let's see how we reacted. And everything happens super fast, right? Because people react very fast in their faces, in their body language, whatever. So if you have more awareness to that, then it definitely gives you a lot more points during the gig, and also to get the gig, because those are very important. And I feel like it's pretty hard to do, but like when you don't have projects and you really want to get a project, then it's very hard to not show this, because
Right.
you're like, oh, I need the gig, I need the gig,
Yeah.
and you kind of like put this energy out there, even if you don't say it. People definitely
They can tell.
receive it.
Yeah.
You can tell. Yeah, exactly. So it's always about like, come to like whatever, a meeting or to an event or whatever, come from a standpoint of like, I want to get to know this person. I want to get to know whoever I'm speaking with right now and see what he's working on, and see, I don't know, just like ask question about what he does, because that's very interesting to me. So like always try to find that a few things or one thing or whatever that really interests you in that person that you're speaking with right now, and actually speak about something that interests you. So like I always feel like there's like three things that are very important, and you kind of like need to keep, I guess, two of them very highly in your mind. It depends on your strength, but you need to like be on time, be a
Okay.
good hang, and be professional. So you need like two out of these that are very very strong with how you think, and how in and with your character. So, because I can be a really great hang, but if I'm not professional, then okay, this person really liked me. Now he want to work with me, but I'm not as professional as he thought. Then it doesn't matter how much he liked me.
Hmm.
Uh, and it also the opposite. I can be extremely professional, but zero social,
Like awareness. Yeah.
awareness or whatever. Yeah, then you just from the get go you won't like to
Right.
be interested in working with me,
Right.
just because we didn't vibe, we didn't talk, I didn't talk with him as much, whatever. So that's also something, that can go both ways. And of course, being on time, that's something that it's like, if you're in a session, you need to come on time, before the time. If you have a deadline, make sure you hit the deadline. Like always be prepared ahead of time. Like this is also kind of like more relate a little bit to be a professional, I guess.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, those are things that I think are very, very, very important to think about what your strength and how you do it. Because there's a lot of times where when I started, when I felt like, oh, I feel very comfortable, my skills are very good, I can go and I can mingle and whatever and get new clients. And one time I had like a really good connection with someone, and it was two producers that they write a lot of music library, and they were like, hey, it was awesome to meet you again and do this lunch with you, whatever. We have something now. We really want you to work with us on that. And that was my first time doing library music. And they had some specs that they needed to receive the stems in in a certain way, and I needed to hit all of those specs, and I just didn't really know what they need and how they need it on. So I kind of was like, I tried to look around and like try to do my research, and but I couldn't find it. And that was my first time working with them, and it didn't went well. Like I sent them the stuff, and they were like, oh, you missed that, oh, you forgot that, oh, the naming
Yeah.
convention needed to be that. And I was like, ah, damn. So even if
Mm.
they like the sound, a lot of the delivery specs weren't in the right way, and then it actually they needed to do some of the job and correct some of the stuff that I did.
Mm.
And that was the last time we worked together. And but it happens a lot, because
Yeah.
this is how you learn. But that's a good example of like how I was a good hang, they liked me, but I wasn't professional enough.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Shalev, you are awesome. You are so amazing. I'm so glad that you came to chat with us. Um,
Thank-
as we wrap up, is there any last minute advice? You've given so much already. So if you're advised out, I totally understand. But is there one last little piece of advice that you have for aspiring engineers that you'd like to share before we finish?
um I'll say, I'll take it to the creative side. I'll say
Okay.
just try to listen to a lot of music. Just listen to
Okay.
music. People forget sometimes, especially people who work on music, forget to just listen to music for fun.
Mm.
And people, even for me, it happens sometimes where I I find myself don't listen to music to, I don't know, like a week or two or whatever, and just because I'm working on music all day. But when you listen to music all the time, you have this in your mind all the time, in your consciousness, in subconsciousness. So all of your decisions will come from all the music that you already listen to, and you know what's the standard right now. So it's definitely it's so important to listen to music all the time, just for fun. From a listening point of view.
Love it. Great advice.
Thank you.
Shalev, thank you so much for being here. It's been such a joy to chat with you. I appreciate
really
your time.
enjoyed it. Really, I mean, you're a very great interviewer, and I felt like it was very fun too, and very open. I felt very open to like speak and tell everything that's on my mind. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much.